Number 10. The UFOs. The UFOs are a group of Hulk villains who wanted to recreate the accident that gave the Fantastic Four their powers. They hired the engineers who built the Fantastic Four's original ship and set off, hoping to be pelted by cosmic rays. Their ground facility was discovered by Bruce Banner, who thought the team were being exposed to the rays by accident and brought the shuttle down. The team resented the fact that Banner tried to save them, as they thought that longer exposure would have made them even more powerful. This resentment caused them to vow revenge on Banner and the Hulk. The UFOs have 4 members: Ironclad, X-Ray, Vapor, and Vector. Ironclad was transformed by the cosmic rays into organic metal that he can control, making him able to increase or decrease his weight at will. This allows him to hover in the air or come down on his enemies with the force of a mountain. He also has superhuman strength and durability. X-Ray was transformed into living energy and therefore can't really be hurt. He can fly, turn invisible, and emit radiation blasts, as well as negative gamma rays, which allow him to transform Hulk back into his human form. I suppose he could also use this power to give most of the Avengers cancer. Vapor can transform into any gas she wants, usually using it to poison her enemies. Vector has telekinetic powers which he can use to move objects, as well as focus into blasts, which have shown to be able to flay most of the Hulk's skin. Sure, the Hulk has managed to take them out on his own, but if they can get him off the board with X-Ray's powers, the other Avengers will have a challenge taking out this supergroup gone bad.
In at number 9 is the Sinister Six. Spider-Man is one of the best heroes Marvel has to offer. Maybe not the most powerful, but arguably the most popular and inspiring. But gosh darn it if he doesn't have a knack for absolutely ticking off his villains with incredibly good, and some might say annoying, quips. He drives villains insane, which is likely why his 6 greatest villains came together to try and bring him down for good. The original team was made up of Dr. Octopus, Electro, Kraven the Hunter, Mysterio, Sandman, and the Vulture, and each one of these villains can arguably give the Avengers a hell of a time on their own, but together they are a force to be reckoned with. There have been multiple different versions of this team, with other villains swapping out, and sometimes they've even had more than just 6 villains on the team. Dr. Octopus, Electro, and the Vulture are usually there, but some other strong villains who have shown up on this team include Green Goblin and Hobgoblin, Lizard, Rhino, Scorpion, Shocker, Venom, and Swarm. Now, I'm keeping them all the way up here because honestly, they get beaten way too often by Spider-Man alone, and they have a huge weakness in the form of being incredibly bad at cooperating with one another. Although, when the Sinister 12 came for Spider-Man, he needed the help of Black Cat, Captain America, Iron Man, Daredevil, Yellow Jacket, and the Fantastic Four for them to hold their own, which is a hell of a feat for the villains. I'll give them that.
Number 8. Alpha Strike. Due to my compulsive need to slowly turn this into an Alpha Flight channel, I present to you Alpha Strike. Alpha Strike is a team led by the Master of Evil, who with a group of villains and a few mind-controlled heroes managed to take over Canada and nearly destroy Alpha Flight in the process. Members of this team include a brainwashed Vindicator who has a battle suit that allows her to lift heavy objects, fly, teleport herself westward at the speed of the Earth's rotation, and fire energy beams that can incinerate a person with ease. Other members include Purple Woman, who like her father the Purple Man can compel people to do whatever she tells them, Citadel, who has a healing factor and adamantium armor grafted onto his body, as well as super strength so powerful he was able to send Colossus flying, the Wendigo, who routinely gives the Hulk a run for his money, and Ranark, who is a powerful user of dark magic, who was once a shaman who tried to claim enough power to become a god. And to anyone who doesn't think the Master would be a threat to the Avengers, I remind you that he already was, as it was he, disguised as Canada's ambassador to the Alpha Flight space program, who manipulated the Inhuman Profiler's evidence in order to isolate Captain Marvel and help cause the second Marvel Civil War.
But in at number 7 is the Squadron Sinister. The Squadron Sinister was a whole team of supervillains created by the Grandmaster as basically copies of the Squadron Supreme of Earth 712. He turned people from Prime 616 universe into counterparts of those Squadron members. These were Kenji Abatu, who became Dr. Spectrum, Kyle Richmond, who became Nighthawk, and Jim Sanders, who became Whizzer, aka Speed Demon. But he also created a version of Hyperion out of non-living extra-dimensional matter. Now, if you know anything about this group of heroes, then you know they are essentially a Marvel Comics parody of versions of DC's Justice League. So then, the Grandmaster pitted this very new powerful squadron against the Avengers in a game against Kang the Conqueror in Avengers number 70. And while they were defeated, they put up a hell of a fight, and if it weren't for the fact that they are villains, there's a possibility they could have came out on top in a different turn of events. And at number 6 though is the Crime Syndicate of America. Why talk about the Marvel version of the evil Justice League when we can just talk about the actual evil Justice League? I don't believe I ever said we had to talk strictly about Marvel villain teams here. Anyways, no. DC's Earth 3 is home to the Crime Syndicate of America, an evil, power-obsessed, and incredibly powerful version of the Justice League that were even strong enough to almost completely take over the actual Earth Zero of DC Comics. Where the Squadron Sinister has Hyperion, who is basically a poo-poo version of Superman, the Crime Syndicate has an actual kryptonite-addicted Superman who pushes around the moon. But on top of that, they have Deathstorm with the Firestorm Matrix powers, Grid, which is basically Cyborg, Johnny Quick, the homicidal Flash, the cowardly Power Ring, who would probably fall to the Avengers honestly, Superwoman, who while extremely powerful was also extremely manipulative, and obviously Owlman, Thomas Wayne Jr., and his sadistic version of Alfred Pennyworth. I would actually love to see how the Avengers fare against this group of villains, because I think it would be really interesting. Let me know your thoughts down below.
Number 5, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. A frequent foe of the X-Men, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants is a group formed by Magneto with the goal of either eradicating or subjugating humanity so that mutant kind can take their place as the dominant species on Earth. While membership has fluctuated over the years, it has played host to villains such as Magneto, who has been able to take on the Avengers by himself in the past, as well as Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, who of course later joined the Avengers. Some of the other members they have had over the years include Mystique, Toad, the Juggernaut, the Blob, Pyro, Mastermind, and Sabretooth, just to name a few. With these powerful team members and their Omega level leader, it would take an impressive roster of Avengers to triumph over this Brotherhood. I mean, what's Iron Man going to do against the Master of Magnetism other than die horribly? The Brotherhood consistently gives the X-Men a run for their money, and frankly, the X-Men are usually way more powerful than the Avengers, so Earth's mightiest heroes would have one hell of a fight on their hands. In order to even stand a chance, they would have to be fighting with a roster that includes Captain Marvel and the Hulk.
Coming to number 4 is the Dark Avengers. Okay, so after the events of Civil War, Iron Man became head of S.H.I.E.L.D. This was pretty quickly followed by the Secret Invasion event where the entire world was basically infiltrated by the Skrulls under Tony Stark's watch. That led the people of the world to not trust him as S.H.I.E.L.D.'s leader, and so Norman Osborn of all people was chosen as the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and somehow a lot of people thought that was a good idea. Norman did a mass rebranding, turning S.H.I.E.L.D. into Hammer, which doesn't actually stand for anything, it just sounds cool. His Thunderbolts became a Black Ops team, and a bunch of Avengers quit, which prompted him to take on new members. Bullseye, Moonstone, and Venom, who are all loyal members of the Thunderbolts, came in dressing up as Hawkeye, Miss Marvel, and Spider-Man respectively. Two extremely strong Avengers, Ares God of War and Robert Reynolds the Sentry, both remained on the team. Then there was also Daken, the son of Wolverine, adopting a costume like his dad's, and Novar, a Kree who took on the Captain Marvel title. Lastly, Osborn himself suited up in a suit of Iron Man armor, but with the Captain America red, white, and blue, plus a star, dubbing himself the Iron Patriot. A team that includes Sentry is almost always a powerhouse, but then you add these other team members and manipulate Sentry to unleashing the Void. The heroes had their hands full just trying to deal with these Dark Avengers and Norman Osborn's hammer. And in at number 3 is the Horsemen of Apocalypse. Every time the ancient, incredibly powerful mutant Apocalypse shows up to cause a headache for the heroes, he is almost always accompanied by his horsemen. Extremely powerful mutants, and sometimes non-mutants, chosen by Apocalypse to receive biological, genetic, and celestial enhancements that push their power to a substantially higher level. They can have their powers augmented or receive completely new powers altogether, whatever would help Apocalypse and whatever his current goal is. Some of the most powerful beings have been one of the Horsemen at some point. I'm talking characters like the Sentry, Hulk, Wolverine, Sunfire, Polaris, Psylocke, and Gambit. But even characters that hadn't existed before showed up as his Horsemen, and they were intense. Apocalypse's final Horseman team, for example, were all largely unheard of characters, but there was Decimus Furious, who was a giant Minotaur-looking guy from way back in the Roman Empire, Jeb Lee, who can give people cancer and cause their flesh to be eaten away by playing on the drums, which is just odd. Sanjar Javid could transmit a whole spectrum of different deadly diseases diseases via metal, and then there was Ishizumi, who could detach her jaw and send an absolutely massive and terrifying swarm of Yum beetles that could devour or dismember her target and steal their memories. Like what? And I haven't even spoken about the first Horseman, and I'm not going to.
Number 2, the Black Order. The goal of the Mad Titan Thanos is to wage war on life itself in an effort to impress the woman he loves, who also happens to be deaf. In order to help him with this goal, he has assembled a team of aliens to serve as his generals, the Black Order. Members include Corvus Glaive, who is not only a tactical genius, but immortal as long as his blade remains intact. Hela, the goddess of death, the Primordial Elder, the Challenger, who can access residual energy from the Big Bang, the telekinetic sorcerer Ebony Maw with persuasive powers, Black Swan, who can shoot optic blasts and has so much strength that she escaped from a prison designed to hold a Herald of Galactus, Black Dwarf, who is pretty much just big and strong, and Proxima Midnight, who is an expert combatant with super strength, endurance, and near invulnerability. They were memorably featured in the Infinity War movie and caused just as much, if not more, trouble for the heroes in the comics as they do in the film.
And in at number 1 is the Cabal in Secret Wars. You know, if you create a group for the sole purpose of destroying planets, you know they have got to be pretty powerful. And the Cabal, created by Namor the Submariner, are absolutely powerful. So, during Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, these things called incursions started to happen, orchestrated by the Beyonders. Essentially, 2 multiverses would crash together, destroying them both, and the focal point for that crash was the Earth itself. When the incursions started to threaten the multiverse, Namor had a different view from the rest of the Illuminati, and during the incursion with Earth 4290001, Namor destroyed that Earth to save both universes and save his Earth. Now when the next incursion presented itself right after that, the Illuminati were going to just let it happen instead of destroying an entire alternate Earth. Standing against that, Namor teamed up with Maximus the Mad of the Inhumans, and then together they freed the prisoners of the Illuminati, which included Proxima Midnight, Corvus Glaive, Terrax, the Herald of Galactus from Earth 13054, Black Swan, and the Mad Titan Thanos himself. Basically, this is like the Black Order from the last point, plus some insanely powerful additions. And they are very powerful. This group of villainous powerhouses were sanctioned by the United Nations to destroy the alternate Earths that appeared during incursions. While Namor had planned to use explosions to destroy the other Earths, Thanos, who pretty much took control of the group, led them in what was basically a complete and utter slaughter. After Namor tried to betray the group during another incursion, they instead became trapped on the other Earth and escaped to the ultimate 1610 universe, where they welcomed an evil alternate version of Reed Richards, known as the Maker, onto that team, making them even more powerful. When they survived the end of the multiverse and end up on Battleworld, this group was strong enough to face an army of Thors, but they didn't really stand a chance against God Emperor Doom. But coming in at number 10 is Hydra. To call Hydra a team isn't exactly a full truth. This organization is and has been comprised of not just notable villains like the Red Skull, Baron von Strucker, Gorgon, Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Viper, Arnim Zola, Baron Helmut Zemo, Kingpin, Taskmaster, Absorbing Man, Bullseye, Crossbones, and many others, but there are also countless nameless henchmen and agents who all spout Hail Hydra. A notable mention going to Bob from the Deadpool comics. You're a good guy. As one of the commenters on part 1 made note of, Hydra isn't so powerful in the sense that they can absolutely obliterate foes, but they have something a lot of villains seem to lack: patience. The slow burn is their bread and butter, with slowly enacted plans that eventually lead them to almost secure world domination. Characters like Thor could punch as many dudes as he wants, but it's the members of Hydra who we don't even know about that are the real problem. What is actually insane to me is that Hydra has actually been around since pre-human time. It was a group of cold-blooded reptile-like aliens that planted the seeds that would eventually give rise to Hydra, with our earliest records of Hydra dating back to 3rd Dynasty Egypt. And at number 9, the Marauders. I think that a lot of mutant villain teams can give the Avengers a headache. As a commenter said in the last video, there is a reason that villains like Magneto and Apocalypse say that mutants are the superior species. Well, one of the cooler mutant villain groups out there, in my humble opinion, would be the Marauders. Originally, the Marauders were a group of mutant mercenaries working for the villain Mr. Sinister. They were formed by Gambit in order to eradicate the population of physically undesirable mutants known as the Morlocks. To accomplish this task, Gambit called in Sabretooth, Arclight, Harpoon, Malice, Scalp Hunter, Scrambler, Vertigo, Riptide, Blockbuster, and Prism. The team has also been led by Magneto, Grey Crow, and Mystique at different points in time, and has also had villains like Ares, Chimera, Omega Sentinel, Polaris, Sunfire, and other unnamed soldiers. And as you might have guessed from Mr. Sinister's involvement, there have also been clones of these characters on the team as well. This group of mercenaries may not seem like the most powerful, but with such ruthless and unforgiving characters, they could easily do some damage to the Avengers. On a side note, if I hear someone bring up Rune King Thor again as if he was ever on the Avengers team with all that power, I want to lose it. He was around for like 5 minutes and it was to stop Ragnarok and then he just went away. In at number 8 is the Hellfire Club. Similar to Hydra, again, the Hellfire Club are not exactly a team, but kind of. And also like Hydra, they play a much more subtle game in terms of their villainous ways. The Hellfire Club has been around since the 1700s, beginning as a British social elite club that would provide luxuries to its members that were not exactly legal or not exactly morally upstanding. But they had a secondary goal of putting together their financial wealth and political power to influence the world from the background for their own goals. While it has many members in different cities, some of which are just regular wealthy people, the group is run by its inner circle, many of whom are indeed powered, and more often than not, they are mutants. This group takes their names after different chess pieces with the black and white kings, queens, bishops, and knights. Now we've already talked about one of them with the White Queen Emma Frost, my bae, but there have been many other members and not all of them have been villainous. So specifically, we're going to talk about the more evil ones. Names like Sebastian Shaw, Elias Bogan, Blackheart, Tom Cassidy, Mystique, Magneto, Trevor Fitzroy, Norman Osborn, Ezekiel Stane, Jason Wingard, Mountjoy, and Emma Steed have all been part of the Hellfire Club. While it isn't really an evil group anymore, with most of the current group made up of heroes, in its prime days of villainy, it absolutely caused problems for the world's heroes. Whoa. Are you subscribed to Top 10 Nerd? I mean, if you're watching this video, I can't imagine there's a reason you shouldn't be. If you like this content, make sure you do subscribe and stay tuned because we put out more videos just like this one every single day.
Number 7, the Liberators. Hailing from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, the Liberators are a group of supervillains who, with under-the-table support from the governments of Russia, France, China, North Korea, Iran, and Syria, invaded the United States. In an effort to counter the United States super team, the Ultimates, the team consisted of each country's version of a super soldier, as well as thousands of mercenaries who each had battle suits that granted them super strength and flight, but shortened their lifespans to only 1 month. Due to extensive planning before the invasion to counter the Ultimates, the Liberators were able to successfully invade in just a few days, taking out the Fantastic Four, the Ultimates Reserves, as well as Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Spider-Man. The Colonel is an Iranian version of Captain America, having a similar power set. This universe's version of the Abomination is from China, but is otherwise very similar to his 616 counterpart. Crimson Dynamo is a Chinese Iron Man who has a battle suit as well as 50 giant-sized duplicates that he can control. Perrin is the Russian equivalent of Thor, sporting a hammer and a sickle. Hurricane is a North Korean speedster. The ultimate version of Swarm is a mutant woman from Syria who can control millions of bugs at a time. Schizoid Man is the Frenchman who can duplicate himself in a manner similar to Multiple Man, and rounding out the team is the god of mischief himself, Loki, who doesn't have a personal stake in the fight, but thought it could be fun to help start World War III. Between all these superpowered foes and their augmented army, the Avengers of Earth 616 would have a hard time overcoming these Liberators.
Coming in at number 6 is Intelligentsia. While some teams have power in raw strength or battle prowess, Intelligentsia has brain power, which basically means they get away with things much more often and for much longer. The team is made up of some of the smartest villainous minds. The leader, MODOK, Mr. Sinister, Wizard, Dr. Doom, Egghead, Claw, Mad Thinker, and more have all at some point been a part of this group. Initially, they formed to exchange information between themselves, but then began collecting parts of the Library of Alexandria scattered in some of the most legendary places, because that's just how it works, and they even caused the arrival of the Beyonder. But in my humble opinion, the team became much cooler during World War Hulk. When Hulk came back to Earth, waging war on the planet, Leader brought the team together, and using their knowledge to hack into defense satellites and harness cosmic energy, they brought the hulking behemoth all the way down to the ground. Using this tech, they managed to figure out how to use cosmic energy and gamma radiation to create incredibly powerful beings like the Red Hulk, Red She-Hulk, A-Bomb, and Amadeus Cho, although this led to their defeat because they're still villains. But in World War Hulk, they managed to succeed where the heroes had failed, and that's saying something. Now we have the new Intelligentsia, and I'm excited to see them do something truly villainous and very cool. And in at number 5 is the Masters of Evil. The Masters of Evil have actually had about 8 different incarnations over their time in Marvel Comics, and because of that, they've had a large handful of powerful members that have gone up against the Avengers, Thunderbolts, and even the Guardians of the Galaxy. The original group was brought together by Baron Heinrich Zemo after he learned that Captain America had returned to the world. He put together a group of the Avengers' various teammates, different villains. So, on this original team, we had Black Knight, Nathan Garrett, Melter, and Radioactive Man, and they chose to attack with Adhesive X, which was basically super glue, which I know how this sounds, but I promise they got way better. Allow me to list some of the other villains that have been a part of the Masters of Evil. We have Enchantress, Executioner, Ultron 5 as the Crimson Cowl, Dr. Octopus, Atlas, Absorbing Man, Bi-Beast, Bloodstone, Firebrand, Hellstrom, Claw, Moonstone, Satanish, Scorcher, Whiplash, Titania, Wonder Man, the Wrecking Crew, and Yellow Jacket. And that's just the big names that stand out to me. Of course, these are all in different combinations with varying levels of effectiveness, but if coordinated properly, they have given the Avengers a tough time in the past, and they very likely could do it again. And in at number 4 is the Army of Evil. Is this cheating? Possibly. Do I care? Nope. Get at me, haters. The Army of Evil was essentially Baron Helmut Zemo taking his reformed Masters of Evil and creating an even bigger team of villains, all for the purpose of helping to expand the power and reach of his arch nemesis, Captain America. What? Yes, this wasn't the Captain America we are used to. This was an evil, twisted version of Captain America who was loyal to Hydra thanks to the Red Skull and his use of a sentient cosmic cube named Kobik. And that was only because Marvel decided to make Steve Rogers loyal to Hydra and then realized that no one wanted that. This Army of Evil consisted of Zemo and the current Masters of Evil alongside Absorbing Man, Baron Blood, Blackout, Blue Streak, the Circus of Crime, Count Nefaria, Cyclone, Dragonfly, Pharah, Graviton, Grey Gargoyle, Gypsy Moth, Hobgoblin, Jack-O-Lantern, Kraven the Hunter, Lady Bullseye, Living Laser, Madame Menace, Mr. Hyde, MODOK, Nitro, Regent, Scorcher, Serpent Solutions, Squid, the UFOs, Whirlwind, Wizard, and Yellow Jacket, and they were sent to attack Midtown Manhattan to lure out America's superheroes, where Zemo would then use the Darkhold to trap the island in Dark Force. Number 3, the Cabal. In the last list, we spoke about the group called the Cabal that was formed by Namor the Submariner to combat the multiversal incursions. But for part 2, we're going to talk about the other Cabal. This version of the Cabal was a secret group created alongside the Dark Avengers by Norman Osborn when he became the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., which he renamed to Hammer. This group was basically the villainous version of the Illuminati, and it consisted of some pretty powerful villains. Obviously, we have Norman Osborn himself, who in my opinion is probably the weakest member of the group in terms of raw power, because next to him we had Emma Frost, an Omega-class telepath, the White Queen of the Hellfire Club, and sometimes headmistress of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. We also had Namor the Submariner, who, well, I think he kinda sucks, but he's the king of Atlantis, Loki of Asgard, who was the whole reason the Avengers formed in the first place, the Hood, who was a skilled sorcerer and powerful crime lord, and as the icing on the cake, they had Dr. Doom of Latveria, who really doesn't even need much of an introduction. Taskmaster was also part of this group as well for a little bit, so yes, this team was highly capable. Unfortunately for them, their alliance was tenuous at best, as it usually is with villainous teams. And at number 2 is the Legion of Doom. So we talked about the crime syndicate from the DC universe, but what would be even more compelling than that would be to see how a group of actual Prime Earth DC villains would do against the Avengers. And why not pick the Legion of Doom as that that group. The Legion of Doom is made up of probably the most prominent of the Justice League's individual villains. I mean, we've got Lex Luthor founding this team and being backed up by Black Manta, Cheetah, Gorilla Grodd, the Joker, and Sinestro. But that's just the original group. Currently, it consists of Amazo, Black Hand, Brainiac, Captain Boomerang, Captain Cold, Golden Glider, Heatwave, Punchline, Scarecrow, Vandal Savage, and Weather Wizard, plus all the original members who I just mentioned. And it at one point even had Black Adam, Mr. Freeze, and Ra's al Ghul. This team would absolutely crush the Avengers, and that's hard for me to even say because I definitely prefer Marvel over DC. There's just no doubt in my mind. Well, except, of course, if Joker does his usual thing and betrays them, or whatever, or they can't get along, or the heroes have to win because that's just how it goes with comic books. Barring those three things, they would crush. Anyways, in for number 1, and for my last trick, I will talk about a group of villains from neither Marvel or DC. No, for our number 1 spot, we're gonna talk about the VILTRUM Empire from Image Comics' Invincible series. Again, a loose definition of the word team, but I mean, if you're all from the same planet with the same goal of ensuring the survivability of your race, that's kind of like a team, a very large team. But the Avengers have faced off against entire races of species before, so I don't know. While they have faced off against other races, the Viltrumites, this is a race of absolutely mind-bogglingly strong humanoids who are next to impossible to take down and who just come back stronger after they heal. Just 3 Viltrumites were able to fly through a planet and completely obliterate it. The Grand Regent of the Viltrumites himself, Thrag, was able to tank some of the most powerful of the heroes that the Earth had to offer, and even the strongest of his own race were absolutely terrified of him. I mean, the final climactic battle between Invincible and Thrag saw the two going punch for punch inside of our sun, and it still took them a good little while to actually being worn down by that fight. This is a race of Superman-like beings the Avengers would not stand a tiny little chance against.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Kang the Conqueror. Also known as Nathaniel Richards, Kang the Conqueror is actually already cast in the live-action MCU, with Jonathan Majors set to play him in Ant-Man 3. But who is Kang? Why is this such a big deal? Well, he made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, and Kang has seen many centuries. His powers allow him to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that can take on pretty much any superhero. He's insanely smart, and of course he travels with armies, hence the toughness behind him. Now, these armies are built in a similar fashion sense, each warrior equipped with the same armor and weaponry. The time travel stuff doesn't come without consequence though, as Kang travels more and more through time. He creates time-displaced duplicates. And as we saw in Avengers Endgame, it can be quite tricky to figure out how to fix time. I think this is the perfect time to introduce a time-hopping villain, especially for Ant-Man, who's now a big-time Avenger who's been around the quantum block a few times. What do you guys think Kang's goal is going to be in Ant-Man 3? Do you think he's going to clean up these timelines, or do you think he's just pissed off and now he wants to just attack anybody who's messed with the quantum realm? Let us know what you guys think in the comments. We love hearing your feedback as well. And before we head on over to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give us a thumbs up on this video, that would help out a lot at the studio. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching, and let's keep on going with this list. Number 9, the Magus. Making his comic book debut in New Mutants issue 18, the Magus is a powerful enemy of Adam Warlock. He travels alongside Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy comic books, and in one of the many after-credit scenes for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Adam Warlock's name was briefly mentioned. Now, this is important because the Magus is actually an enemy of Adam Warlock. He's a tyrant and a god, and now he appears as a ghostly form because, well, he's an evil version of Adam Warlock from the future. Crazy. So Adam Warlock was created by the Enclave when they were trying to create these perfect invincible beings. They created Adam, and we see this in one of those after credit scenes where she goes, "I shall name him Adam." And then everyone in the theater knows what's coming, they know what's coming up. It was exciting, it was a big moment. So Adam, during his travels, runs into the oppressive Universal Church of Truth and their god being the Magus. He was then shocked to see that the Magus is a dark, twisted version of himself obsessed with the Infinity Stones, much like Thanos' desire. So could we see Adam come out of his glowing birthing pod and stir up some more Infinity Gem madness in the MCU? Yes, let's hope so. I think if the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 wasn't delayed or pushed on to later, we would have seen this already in motion, maybe in WandaVision. Number 8, Taskmaster. He's the big bad villain coming with the Black Widow movie, which we're still eagerly awaiting for. But just who is this hooded, shadowy fighter from the trailers? Taskmaster made his comic book debut back in Avengers 195. Anthony Masters, he is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, of course, who turned into a mercenary and assassin. And his whole thing that makes him special is that he can replicate your physical skills. He has this photographic reflex memory. So we can watch a video of Black Widow take down some evil henchmen and then bam, he's got it locked into his brain. He knows that choreography. He became a teacher based out of the Taskmaster's Academy to train villains, agents, henchmen, and even some heroes. He learned how to twirl a lasso by watching cowboys on TV, and he learned how to play basketball by watching the NBA. He's kind of amazing. And he chose to be a villain instead of being an NBA superstar. What a clown. He's quite impressive. I mean, most Hydra agents, AIM troopers, HELLFIRE, Club Enforcers, and other big bad groups, they all most likely graduated from the Taskmaster Academy for henchmen. And I'm super excited to see him in action in Black Widow. I'll gladly wait longer and longer and longer just so I can see him in IMAX hucking a shield. It's gonna be so worth the wait. Mwah. Number 7, Scarlet Witch. No more mutants. The 3 words that changed everything. So Scarlet Witch, okay, we're all counting down the days until the next episode of WandaVision because now it's cooking. Because now we can finally see an evil Wanda Maximoff. More evil than when she was in Ultron. That didn't really, you don't count that. She's the daughter of Magneto and the twin brother of Quicksilver, aka Pietro Maximoff. Now, she was on her father's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but at one point she did, of course, join the Avengers. She's one of the biggest Marvel characters ever, and during the events of M-Day, she spoke those 3 words, and just like that, a mass amount of mutants were depowered or killed. So after she said those 3 words, that large number that ended up being affected was somewhere around 986,000 people, only leaving a couple hundred mutants left. Now, with the last 2 episodes of WandaVision sneaking up, it's more than likely that we'll see Wanda lean into this villain part. I mean, she's already expanded the Hex to a much larger scale, and now everybody's trapped prepping for the circus, eating swords, talking to the camera, the whole sitcom life, living up the hashtag sitcom life, you know? Tyler Hayward at one point in a previous episode asks if Wanda has a Avengers alias, but they make it very clear that she doesn't. This is almost to remind the audience that she hasn't got a cool nickname yet. So when the name the Scarlet Witch comes in, that'll be a big deal because that'll be her being marked as a villain with the name Scarlet Witch. With this whole Agatha Harkness witch stuff coming into play, I think we're very close to seeing Wanda flip to the dark side. At least for a little bit until Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness comes out, and then they have to make her not evil and help out and stuff. It's gonna be a whole thing. This is just a start. Number 6, Morgan Le Fay. Medieval witches and alternate timelines. I mean, that should say enough right there. She made her first appearance in the Black Knight issue 1 back in 1955. And Morgan Le Fay is based off of the Arthurian legend, so she's got a little bit of King Arthur, a little bit of evil magic, and 100% reason to remember the name. She's tried to rule the world many times, specifically after the events of Onslaught, where the Avengers go to an alternate Earth, and when they get back in Heroes Reborn, The Return, we have this new world filled with mythical creatures, of course being ran by Morgan Le Fay. Yeah, she got her hands on the Norn Stones and then made Scarlet Witch add her magic to the fun mix as well. So maybe we'll see that come to play as well. We got a lot of playing room with Scarlet Witch and witchcraft and all that magical stuff. It's gonna be crazy. Number 5, Age of Ultron. This one just starts off hot, right off the bat. Hawkeye is sneaking into this abandoned building, just taking dudes out slowly. They have Spider-Man captured and he looks terrible. He looks like he just got hit by a freight train. Now in the MCU, Tony and Bruce are the masterminds behind Ultron, but in the comics, it was actually Hank Pym. Ultron made his first debut back in 1968 in Avengers issue 54, and in the comics, Hank Pym was actually the father of Ultron. He actually has the same brain patterns as Hank Pym, because he figured it needed personality, much like our MCU version of Ultron is another personality of Tony Stark's. So cut to the comic event Age of Ultron by Brian Michael Bendis. We see Ultron in all of his glory and it's quite menacing. The world is just trashed. He's from the future and he's here to take over the planet. The death toll reaches billions, including some of our favorite heroes. If you haven't read it, strongly recommend. Much better than the movie Age of Ultron, which was just like the weekend of Ultron, rather. Number 4, Civil War. Okay, the opening scene of Endgame is wild. The remaining heroes, minus Tony Stark, head out into space to take on Thanos, with the help this time of Captain Marvel. They actually sneak up on him and they cut the gauntlet off his arm in like 6 seconds. They kind of win really fast. See, when the Avengers are united and they have a plan, things work out. The other crew in space in Infinity War couldn't even get the gauntlet off of Thanos. Quill was freaking out, the gravity was off, Thanos had the stones. It was tricky, but if Civil War never happened, I fully believe that they would have handled Thanos as a team much sooner. But by the time Thanos begins his quest for the stones, Tony and Steve aren't even on speaking terms. Okay. This all comes down to the events from Captain America Civil War. Now this ends with Tony and Steve fighting it out, and Cap drops the shield. Tony blasts off Bucky's arm. It's heartbreaking to say the least, but it's one of my favorite Marvel movies. For some reason. I like watching people lose. I don't know what it is. Number 3, Avengers Disassembled. Brought to us from the mind again of Brian Michael Bendis, Avengers Disassembled is a 5-parter that brings the team together just to be torn apart again. It is a ride. The story begins with the Avengers mansion sensors blasting to warn the team of an intruder. Now the intruder is the Jack of Hearts, who actually died beforehand saving Cassie, Ant-Man's daughter. So what's going on here? Why is he here? Well, Jack blows up, taking half the mansion out with him, along with the life of Ant-Man. That's crazy. And then the Vision crash lands with the Quinjet, starts attacking the rest of the survivors, and then She-Hulk comes out and rips Vision into 2. And then while She-Hulk was going nuts, she accidentally hurt Wasp, Captain America, and Captain Britain. She-Hulk ended up leaving the group because of the guilt inside after she just wreaked havoc. Now this whole event is wild, even before Scarlet Witch is revealed to be behind it all. Spoiler alert. This is when Wanda lost her 2 kids because, well, they weren't actually her 2 kids. They were created from Mephisto. So she was upset. Eventually, she was defeated by Doctor Strange and Magneto took over from there. Now, this is where people, and I, want Wanda to go in the MCU. Perhaps studying the Darkhold and the recent loss of Tommy and Billy, she might make a big bad comeback. Who knows? Number 2, Avengers Red Zone. Avengers Volume 3 Issue 65, titled Avengers Red Zone, is a 6-parter that begins with this mysterious red cloud coming through South Dakota. Oh, this is a nightmare. So it's bringing a plague, basically. It's a red mist of doom. It's kind of like the movie The Mist, but without monsters, although it's just as terrifying. So everybody wears masks, because you know that's what happens when there's a plague and you don't want to, die. You wear masks. Weird concept, I know. But it's still a war zone. People are dying off fast. Now in comes Captain America and the Avengers to save the day, figure out what's going on. And the team struggles here a lot. They get sick, they get infected, their motivation is just low, their team members are dying off, and things come to a fun turn when Iron Man and Black Panther create a cure. Great. But Iron Man gets trapped by Red Skull come part 6. The team is not looking good at this point. Cap is down, so Tony takes his suit off and exposes himself to the mist in order to give Steve CPR. No sacrifice, no victory. Sam Witwicky. And finally, number 1, Infinity Gauntlet. Coming from the minds of Jim Starlin, George Perez, and Ron Lim, Infinity Gauntlet was released in 1991, and Avengers Infinity War mirrored a lot of what happened from that event. Yes, Thanos wanted to take out half the universe because he wanted to impress Mistress Death this time around. He wanted to be her equal, whereas in the movie, he just wanted to fill people's bellies. The film adaptation was, in my opinion, Marvel's best work. All those characters in one movie, it felt smooth, didn't feel long, it didn't feel slow at any part. It's kind of great. In the movie, when Thanos is obtaining these gems, he toys with the Avengers in a similar way. In the comic, he turned them into strings and cubes, and then in Infinity War, Drax and Mantis had that happen to them as well. Even in theaters, I was like, this looks familiar, the whole cube thing. There's plenty of other references, it's awesome, and it's hard to make a list about the Avengers losing and not including the time we all paid them over $2 billion to lose. And that was Avengers Infinity War. Thanks, Russo brothers. Killing it. Kicking off the list at number 10, Avengers Under Siege. Written by Roger Stern, released in 1987, this is their first big battle after taking on Loki. It's a fan favorite, so I figured I'd start with this one. It began back in Avengers issue 270, when the Avengers were still living in Tony Stark's mansion in New York. It was comfortable until Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil stormed the mansion. Tigra and Black Knight were injured severely, and Hercules was beaten so hard he went into a coma. And while they still were in for a hot minute, the Masters of Evil destroyed everybody's belongings, including the only photo left of Captain America's mother. That was a pretty sad page. Number 9, Secret Invasion. With Disney announcing all these new Marvel shows, we can start speculating where the plot might go. Like for example, Secret Invasion was announced, and now Emilia Clarke has signed on to do it. along with Samuel L. Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn, so it's clear some Skrulls are probably going to be in the picture. In the comics, Secret Invasion was an event that took place where Skrulls wanted to take over Earth. They thought it was rightfully theirs, so they're like, yeah, let's do this. So what better way to take over the world than to blend in like one of the greatest heroes on it? So after the Skrulls had experimented on the Illuminati, they put one Skrull secretly in every team in all of these states. So with Sharon Carter making some shady phone calls after she was pardoned in the final credit scene of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I'm betting that she's already secretly a Skrull. Number 8, House of M. This 8-part event written by Brian Michael Bendis starts off rather beautiful, dare I say. Wanda Maximoff is giving birth to her new twins. Vision is by her side, and then Xavier's voice just pops in out of nowhere, demanding that Wanda returns the world to normal. She refuses, and she hangs on to her children, and they shatter. The world goes away, and Wanda returns back to the normal world, where she has no twins, but she's in a dark room on Genosha. And he uses his powers to put her back to sleep. Then in comes Magneto, and he asks about his daughter's progress. And Charles is afraid, because at this point, her power is too much to handle. Now in Avengers Tower, the team is discussing on what to do with Wanda. The ideas are getting kind of dark, because they have to. Wolverine is suggesting that they just take out Wanda, just killing her, which is pretty dark. But then when Quicksilver passes on this gossip, Wanda then warps reality into a world called House of M, where mutants were top dogs and Magneto and his family just ruled them all. Other Marvel heroes were given their desires, like Peter was married to Gwen Stacy, Cyclops is married to Emma Frost, and Doctor Strange is a psychologist. The world is completely different, but the only person who remembers real life is Wolverine, the same guy who suggested that they Wanda. Things took a turn, and the event became even more stressful when Wanda uttered those 3 words in issue 7. No more mutants. Number 7, Secret Empire. In Avengers Endgame, Steve uses future knowledge to obtain the scepter. He says, "Hail Hydra," Rumlow gives it over, no elevator fight needed. Nice. It was a fun moment in the theater, but the line "Hail Hydra" comes right from the comics, but this time around it's not that entertaining. The last words come from Steve after the Avengers standoff event, where it's revealed he's actually a sleeper agent of Hydra. Another pawn of the Red Skull after all. This was huge news. I mean, fans were really upset. Readers were sending in death threats to the writers. The 2017 series Secret Empire was wild. The team had to go against their own leader, Cap, who was trying to take over the government with Hydra, and then eventually run all of the United States. It was crazy. Bad Steve took out Rick Jones, he took out Black Widow. I mean, it's fair, readers were upset, really. This is a nightmare. In the end, it was concluded that Bad Cap was a double and Good Cap was actually locked in the Cosmic Cube. Number 6, Axis. When Red Skull abducted numerous mutants and Inhumans, Magneto tracked him down. Now at the same time, Scarlet Witch, Rogue, and Havoc were captured by Red Skull's S-Men and brought to the island / horror camp. The Avengers escaped and saved Magneto. Magneto gave Red Skull the beatdown of a lifetime. He got caught up in the moment and went a little bit too far perhaps. Magneto says that he did what had to be done, and he thinks that he saved countless amount of lives. But then Red Onslaught rises to the challenge. Red Skull is reborn, this time he's bigger and badder. The X-Men and Avengers team up to stop Red Onslaught, where a number of heroes inverted. Yeah, their personality and moral compass just totally flipped, which certainly didn't help the situation at all. But the fun part is when our villains also get inverted and they join the Avengers to stop Red Onslaught. So it's a mess, it's a big fun mess. Number 5, the Kree Skrull Empire. They made their comic debut in Fantastic Four issue 2 back in 1962. A lot of 2s in there. And they made their Marvel Cinematic debut only a couple years ago in Captain Marvel. But who are the Skrulls? Well, they're a race of shapeshifters from the Andromeda Galaxy, and they look like green humans almost, except much more powerful and ferocious. They lived on the homeworld of Skrullos in the Drock system, and I loved watching these guys in Captain Marvel. They were a lot of fun, and it was nice to see them actually not be the main villain in the movie. Usually we have these evil gods or these crazy insane robots, but to see the villains of that movie end up wanting just the same chances of survival as humans made it more touchy, more emotional. You know, they're carrying around kids, just looking after their own. Like, it's nice. It was a nice change of pace. Even for a fake out, it was still rewarding. It was still fun. So yeah, they're expert shapeshifters. They can transform into anything, organic or non-organic, as long as it's solid. They can't adapt to superpowers unless you're a super Skrull, which, I mean, those guys you don't want to play around with. The Kree Skrull War is amongst one of the biggest threats to the Avengers because they both believe that the Earth is theirs to claim. See, the Kree performed experiments on humans millennia ago, and then they actually caused the creation of Inhumans. And the Skrulls just see Earth as their new homeworld since theirs was destroyed by Galactus. So a good comic to check out with them would be the 1974 storyline, The Kree Skrull War by Roy Thomas. Avengers 89 to 97. Number 4, Dr. Doom. Making his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 5, Victor Von Doom likes to go head-to-head with the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. He's one of the most popular Marvel villains ever, and he's not easy to forget. Just by looking at him, he's one of the coolest guys, I think. He thinks he's right. He thinks that he'll actually do a good job ruling the world. I mean, he's so smart, maybe he's correct. Maybe he could do it, but he's kind of evil, so we don't want to see it get to that point. He is the ruler of the land Latveria, and he really cares about this place in Fantastic Four 246. We see this compassion come to play in full force. So why the taste for ruling? Where did this all start, right? Well, each supervillain has their own path, and for Victor, that path started turning to the dark side before he was even born. You see, his mother was a Latvian woman, and she liked to get close to demons. I mean, perhaps a little too close. And after Victor was born, she would attempt to tap into these demonic powers herself, and her clan didn't like that, so they took her out. Sad stuff. So him and his dad were like, okay, see ya, this place sucks, we're out of here. Sadly, during this escape, his dad ended up freezing, and then he had to go on by himself as just a young boy. Then he figured he'd try this demonic power tapping himself later on in life, and then with no luck, he turned to his brain power, and then he soon met Reed Richards when he was in school. So that sad origin plus the college hazing, I mean, this is a villain backstory in the making. Number 3, Loki. Arguably one of the finest characters of the MCU, Loki is the adoptive son of Odin, but who are his real parents? Who is he? What is he doing? Why is he like this? Well, Loki was left as a baby. He was abandoned in his homeworld of Jotunheim, and during a battle, Odin had found this lost child and took him on as his own. What a sweet man, what a sweet gentle giant. So we see this play out in the first Thor movie back in 2011. And then when Loki finds out his motives are peddled by being the offspring of an evil frost giant, he gets a little upset, naturally. He always felt different growing up and often looked down on Thor as he got the most attention and love. Must have been those curly blonde waves. I mean, come on. Odin had chosen not to tell Loki about his true heritage, and he raised him as one of his own. And he's the villain that we love to hate. I'm honestly super excited to see the God of Mischief hop around time in the Loki show coming up. We can't get enough Tom Hiddleston as this role, and I'll happily wait week after week to see him cause more MCU mischief. Happily. Number 2, Ultron. In the MCU, Tony and Bruce are the masterminds behind Ultron, but in the comics, it was actually Hank Pym. Ultron made his first debut back in 1968 in Avengers 54, and beneath the Crimson Cowl, we discover that he is indeed Ultron Pym. See, in the comics, Hank Pym was actually the father of Ultron. There are many versions of Ultron, seeing as he constantly wants to upgrade himself to be bigger and badder. He actually has the same brain patterns as Hank Pym, so he figured it needed a personality, much like our MCU version of Ultron is basically Tony Stark, but with jealousy issues and a lot more metal. A good example of his ruling comes from the Age of Ultron from 2013. Like right off the bat, we can see a dark, life-drained world, and Spider-Man wakes up like, what'd I miss? Ultron is attacking from the future. That's how ahead of the game he is in this comic. And I can't lie, I was really excited for the Age of Ultron movie in the MCU. Like the trailer made him seem so dark and ominous. Even his voice was badass. And then in the movie, he just sounds like normal James Spader, and he just walks around talking about omelets. There's rumors that he'll return for WandaVision, but I mean, maybe it's best to leave him in 2015, at least for a bit longer. And finally, number 1, Thanos. You know who this guy is, come on. We first saw him in the after credit scene of Avengers 1 and 2, and then we saw him sitting down in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then we saw him snap away half of all life in the universe in Avengers Infinity War. The Mad Titan first made his comic book debut back in Iron Man issue 55, and funny enough, Robert Downey Jr. is 55 years old, so just a coincidence, literally just a coincidence. So we all know how powerful Thanos is with the Infinity Gauntlet, but if you still haven't seen the movie, I'll touch briefly on those. But look, without the Gauntlet, Thanos is still a villain you don't want to mess around with. He is still a Mad Titan. He was born on the Saturn moon Titan, both of his parents were Eternals, and due to the genetic disorder known as the Deviant Syndrome, his mother actually tried to take him out at first sight. So he's got a pretty dark history already. He got payback when he took out his entire family just to impress Death. And then in the opening of Avengers Infinity War, we see Thanos level the Hulk without even using a single stone. That's how strong this guy is. He just, right in the neck, you're done. But then once he gets the 6 Infinity Stones, he has control over each cosmic power. Those of course being soul, time, power, reality, space, and mind. Now after he snapped his fingers and half of all life disappeared, in the comics he does this to get the attention of Death. But in the movie he does so to be a savior, because you know, too many mouths to feed, not enough to go around. I mean, you could just snap some Cinnamon Toast Crunch into everybody's home. That would be a great start, Thanos. Just an idea.